And so let's say your campaign is going well, maybe you've got a couple of playlists, and what's next? So there's a lot of talk about doing versions, waterfall strategies, and remixes, and how to expand on a campaign that lasts more than a couple of weeks after the release is out. I'd love to get your input on what strategy labels and artists can take to make sure that their campaign lasts for a long time, and how to really make the most out of their releases.
So I think the first thing that comes to mind is that a lot of the time an artist will release something and then release something on a Friday, and then by the following Wednesday, to them it's old news. They've been sat on this thing for a while. So there's a tendency to go on to the next one. Pressing pause on that and cooling off a little bit, and remembering that if 5,000 people have listened to it in the first week, there's still a lot of people that haven't listened to that song. There's still a lot of people that's going to be new to. So don't be afraid to continue to work a track that's already out, or going back into your catalogue if you're seeing something that's performing well, even if it was 2 years old. Don't be afraid to come back to that, circle back and give that a push, because there are so many people that you can introduce your music to. The idea of discovery now is more about discovering new audiences rather than new songs. So I think don't be afraid to hesitate and just stay on a track for a little bit longer. If you're looking at the data after a couple of weeks and you're seeing absolutely nothing, then you don't have to keep flogging a dead horse. But don't be afraid just to pause and let it bed in a little bit, let people get to know it, and then make a decision on what you want to do. In terms of what you can do from then, so you mentioned versions. A new version of a track can be a really nice way of, you can maintain consistency a little bit without needing to constantly release new music. You can keep up that release cadence that platforms favor and algorithms favor. But I think the key point for me on new versions is they have to have artistic value in and of themselves to be effective. So don't do it for the sake of doing it. But if there's a kind of artistic angle or something that works creatively, then 100% that should be going out. They can be particularly impactful when you combine them with a collaboration. So if you were looking at, like, a case this would work really well is if you're an artist from country A and you were looking to break into country B. If you collaborate with an artist from country B, you will tap into their algorithmic streaming a little bit and the algorithm will help you reach some of their fan base. B, if they're listed as a primary artist on the metadata, then they have the ability to pitch it in Spotify for artists as well. So if they've already had some support, it will help coming from their side and you can break into editorial like that. And C, it just, with the organic and the kind of active listenership, it helps to build that story around you and your positioning and just sort of where you exist culturally. So that can be a way of giving a track a second life, or breaking into a new market, or just extending the kind of timeline or lifespan of a track, would be to team up with someone else and do that. That's why remixes work so well. If you're looking at moving on to the next release, then waterfalling is a strategy that can work well, where you put the previous track as the second track on the new product with the new single as the first track. I would say it works best when the previous track already has some algorithmic traction, when you're seeing something picking up already on that front. When you do that, or when you're seeing that and you waterfall the product, sometimes you'll see that algorithmic boost on the previous track and then also carry over onto the new track. So it's a kind of halo effect, I guess, on that old track that was performing well. So there's a couple of things that you can do just like that. I think generally speaking, the big thing is just like, you got to keep talking to your fans about this music, because if you don't do that, nobody else is going to. So you got to keep on reminding people that it's out. It doesn't have to be cringe or cheesy or too desperate. You just got to, the music is the product and you've got to market it. So it's a case of just staying active, not moving on to the next thing straight away because it's old news. And then if there are strategies to extend it when you're seeing life on something already, then those are a few options for you.
I love what you said about maintaining the artistic value of everything that you do on this kind of the strategy, whether it's remixes, collaborators, new version, it really has to make sense. Be in line with the artist's sound, and also making sure that it's in line artistically where they want to be.
100%. And can I quickly plug a platform that I have no involvement with whatsoever, but use all the time. It's a platform called Music Tomorrow, where you can see how the algorithm identifies your music and puts you alongside similar artist clusters. So if you were looking to do a remix or a feature or a collaboration, you can see on a kind of cluster map other artists that the Spotify algorithm identifies you as similar to. So if you're looking for algorithmic reach, that can be a really nice way of starting to think about who might make sense to work with.
Totally. No, that's a good plug. Definitely one to use for sure. And just quickly on your thought in terms of budget, now you have quite a lot of tools available, especially on Spotify. We can talk about the various tools that they have, Marquee, Showcase, and Discovery Mode. But just do you have any thought in terms of how to spend the budget and where does that make sense and which tool to use, if any?
I always use these paid on-platform Spotify tools as something to supplement your main strategy rather than being kind of the driving force. But there's times where they work well. Marquee can be something where you get the full screen pop-up on mobile for a new release. If you're coming back as an artist and you've got a fan base and you need to re-engage them, let them know you're back, that can be quite a good way of doing that. If you're looking at targeting people in certain markets, again, it can be quite effective. You just got to be careful with the cost on it because you end up spending a lot, and you've got to just track the return on investment there quite carefully. So always try and start small, see what works. And it's the same with any other kind of paid media. If it works, then keep on pushing it. Just test it in different markets, and you can test different audience segments on it as well. I guess the big one is discovery mode for Spotify in terms of their on-platform tools. And it's something that I'll use wherever possible. There's obviously a element to it that where it reduces your royalties from streams from within discovery mode sources by 30%. So you're going to take a bit of a cut. But if you're strategic about how you use it and don't just plaster it on everything, then you can see it's quite effective. In fact, sometimes it's incredibly effective, where you'll see streaming shoot up like this when you turn it on. So I think the key with it for me is track it carefully, monitor it carefully, use it strategically. So if you're seeing a track that's already, again, these things don't do the heavy lifting for you. You've got to already have a bit of traction. You've got to already get to a point where the algorithm is recommending your music to people. There's that organic engagement on a track or a release. If you're at that point, pressing go on discovery mode can be really effective in taking it to the next level. Or you could use it, you could monitor your catalogue performance and see which songs in your catalogue are performing well. Maybe you've got a new release coming up in a few months. You want to re-engage listeners, remind them that you exist. That could be an option then to press go on discovery mode on your catalogue. So as long as you're strategic with it, again, and use it to supplement your main strategy rather than as your strategy, I think that they're all things to consider. With the ones where you have to spend up front, my advice would always be start small. Think about where you want to target. Sometimes the biggest markets aren't always the easiest to break through on those things. You won't see the most impact. So think about what you're trying to achieve, and you can use those to get towards that.